what is more stable than 21 million max supply? It can be anywhere and everywhere at the exact same time. And I can securitize and lend against it because I know it's not going anywhere, especially once the ETF comes out. There's no risk of carry on it. There's no risk of a roof leaking. There's no risk of the tenants ruining the place, etc., etc. So as far as I'm concerned, we need to get back to a point where houses are used for what they're used for in the 60s and 70s, which is just living in. And the financial system will adopt Bitcoin as a securitized asset because it just makes the most sense. It has less risks than real estate. It has less overall volatility than real estate once it has a high enough market cap. And there's no geographical risk when it comes to, where is this Bitcoin based? It completely democratizes the financial markets and allows the financial incentives to align behind it. That's why one reason why Bitcoin will beat out real estate, because while people are telling you they're buying real estate because it's physical, they're bullshitting themselves. They're buying real estate because they understand that they can take advantage of the financially incentivized game around real estate. And it was only once real estate became a securitized asset that the prices actually started going up. And that is what is exactly about to happen to Bitcoin right now. And that's why if you've got real estate or you're thinking of allocating into real estate, there has to be a conversation of maybe I should take a small percentage of this and allocate it to Bitcoin. The beautiful thing about Bitcoin is if you're a lender and you're looking at it going, I want a securitized asset that I can lend against, but I want to reduce down the number of risks that I have with real estate. There's a bunch of risks with real estate, right? The area that you're buying in could turn into crap. Look at San Francisco, right? And even in San Francisco, property prices are holding up because it's a securitized asset. People have no other options. But now another option is emerging, and that option is Bitcoin. So, for example, if I want a long-term lending proposal on an asset, and I look at real estate versus Bitcoin for the next 20 years, once Bitcoin's price stabilizes, and by the way, that's the opportunity between now and then, that right now the price is volatile, it's a young asset. As the asset turns into more of an adult asset, the price is going to be less volatile, as human beings are. And therefore, I can now lend against that Bitcoin for a longer term period at a lower interest rate because it is possible for me to hold that loan and depend on the Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin has no cost of carry. You don't need to change the roof. You don't need to paint the walls. You don't need to do anything when it comes to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin becomes a better securitized asset. And in fact, the financial markets want assets that have the least amount of physical maintenance that's needed, because that causes risk on their portfolio. Because if the person does not maintain it, then the value of the underlying asset could go down. So Bitcoin has that. You don't have that cost of carry that you're talking about, right? And also when it comes to the incentives around owning Bitcoin, it's much higher. People say, people will always need houses and therefore they're physical and I can own them because people will always need them. Well, with Bitcoin, look at what's coming when it comes to the utility of Bitcoin. You can right now do transactions around the world on the second layer network called Lightning. That is coming. More of that is coming. And as that happens, the utility of Bitcoin goes up. But even when you look at the utility of houses, when I tell you that 50 to 60% of the houses of the flats, of the apartments, or the houses in London are sitting empty because their foreign owners don't want to take the risk or the hassle of actually lending them out, which is the renting part, because the risk is higher of doing that rather than just sitting empty and catching the capital appreciation. That's what's going to happen with Bitcoin. You don't need to generate the cash flow in order for the value of the asset to go up. And the difference with Bitcoin is it's actually the prime real estate, right? Bitcoin is actually the prime land opportunity. It is the prime real estate opportunity. Because there's only so much of it. The reason why number one Hyde Park and I guess, whatever in Central Park is worth what it is because of the scarcity of it. And Bitcoin has the highest amount of scarcity compared to any real estate that you could find. I'm pretty sure there's 21 million houses if you aggregated all oceanfront property. I'm pretty sure there is. There is not more than 21 million Bitcoin in the entire world. Whether you're talking about single family homes, whether you're talking about prime real estate, Bitcoin is everything. And so Bitcoin becomes much more of a desirable asset. And on top of that, you add to the fact that you can actually securitize it, especially with the ETF, right? Because the ETF is already a securitized asset. The one risk with Bitcoin, if you want to borrow against it or you want to lend against it, is what happens if the person loses their keys, what happens if this happens, what happens if that happens. That's a real risk from a lender's perspective. However, once an ETF comes out and you know that BlackRock, Coinbase, or whoever else, Fidelity, is managing that Bitcoin, I can now lend against it and turn Bitcoin into a fully securitized asset, just like real estate. In fact, better than real estate. Why? Because I know it's not going anywhere. I know who the custodian is. I know who's keeping it. And so the incentives will start to shift. So if you're sitting there looking at property going, hey, I've done so well in property, just realize property didn't do well before the 1960s and 1970s. When that financial system changed and they realized we need to figure out a way to pump this money out, now it started to shift, it started to change, and real estate prices started to go up because it became a securitized financial asset. Bitcoin is a much better financial asset than real estate. So therefore, Bitcoin will start extracting capital. Unfortunately, for normal people, the institutions are not emotionally attached to a particular asset, unlike you and I. What they want to do is find out what's the best way that I can borrow and lend against this and grow my ownership stake in this particular asset while growing the amount of borrowing that I'm taking, because they know that's the winning strategy. You're borrowing money almost free, generating a return on it through the cash flow when it comes to real estate, etc., etc. Whereas with Bitcoin, because of the true scarcity of it, cash flow is irrelevant. The Bitcoin is the best financial asset because it actually lives up to what real estate was trying to be. It is actually scarce. Real estate is scarce because of regulatory demands that are put onto real estate. It's not scarce because if you had unlimited building permits, all you controlled for was the quality of the house that was built, you would have many more houses than we have right now, and the price of housing would go down. But they actually control how many houses can be built for a particular reason, because it is a collateralized financial asset. It is not a utility, right? I would say something like 50 to 60% of the properties, the main, properties in London, are sitting empty. Why would they just be sitting empty with foreign owners? They're sitting empty with foreign owners because it is a financial asset. That's what it is. It is in some cases it's an escape hatch. In some cases it's a way to borrow more money to grow your wealth at the cheapest rates possible for the longest term possible. Real estate prices did not go up because the real estate was valuable. Real estate prices went up because the real estate in a securitized form was valuable. And that's the one thing that I want you to realize. Anyone who's telling you that they're buying property because it's physical, there might be like 1% of people doing that. Most people are buying real estate because they can borrow against it easily, they can have a long-term borrowing against it easily, and it is a stable asset. Because Bitcoin is the new emerging real estate when it comes to a securitized asset. A lot of people are not going to understand this, and they're going to have emotional attachments to real estate, and that I understand. But just admit that you have an emotional attachment to real estate, not that that Bitcoin is not better than real estate. You have to admit that I have an emotional attachment to real estate, and I'm not willing to learn why Bitcoin might be better than real estate and might be the next emerging thing compared to real estate. If you can admit that, then we can move forward. But until you admit that, you're going to be stuck in the doom cycle that real estate is stuck in because the juice has been squeezed out. We are at a point where houses all over the world cost so much money to buy that populations will revolt, will vote out governments if this isn't fixed. So therefore, governments have to step in and use their regulatory powers to control the price of real estate, even though it's a securitized asset. As that happens, the people that are doing the securitizing will realize we need better opportunities than real estate because this ain't working. The profit margins aren't good enough anymore. And they'll look at Bitcoin and say, maybe this can be it. And of course it can be it because it's better than equities, it's better than real estate, it's better than gold. So now Bitcoin starts to become a securitized asset, and you remove the securitized value, the price premium value out of real estate. Prime real estate will always have more of a value than anything else. But overall, the idea that Bitcoin is a better securitized asset than real estate makes a bunch of sense. And if you're sitting there telling me, but real estate is physical, that's why I bought it, you're lying to yourself at minimum, and secondly, you're lying to me. So you need to understand the only reason you bought real estate is because of the intangible securitized nature of it after 1970, and before that, people were using housing for what is meant to be used for, which is living in. So we need to get back to that so people can start having a good quality of life, and Bitcoin is the best asset to do that with. And right now we're going through the securitization of Bitcoin, and it is coming. This is one reason why I do not buy the argument that I bought real estate because it is a physical asset, because you never did. You were trained to. You were trained and incentivized to. So what happens when the world is trained and incentivized to buy Bitcoin because of its securitized nature? What happens in that moment? So if you're sitting there with a real estate portfolio going, hey, I'm kind of happy, I was making 12% a year, now I'm making 8% a year. I'm still kind of happy because at least it's going up. You're lazy. You're not looking at what is happening in the financial markets. Bitcoin is going to be a much better securitized asset than real estate, and therefore it will overall start sucking money away from real estate. Even if it doesn't take a single penny from what's currently in real estate, if it starts taking a few percentage points of the new money that's going into real estate, and you're still sitting there going, yeah, I'm buying real estate because it's physical, understand, no one has ever, in this boom cycle of US dollar printing, bought real estate because it's a physical asset. They've bought it because it's the easiest securitized asset that they could take part in. And now Bitcoin's taking that. But despite all of this, there's still only 3 rules to Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy.